The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the show. It's the 4th of July. What better thing to discuss on the 4th of July, Lewis, than to look back at all of our discussions recently about patriotism, about supporting the troops, what that means. Do Republicans really support the troops? What does it mean to be patriotic? Are French millionaires more patriotic than American millionaires, or are they less patriotic? All paramount questions when we talk about patriotism on a day that is often associated with what? I mean, what is the 4th of July associated with?
Alcohol, burgers, fireworks, and patriotism.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
we can't really discuss alcohol, burgers, and fireworks, but I think patriotism is a pretty good topic.
I think that it is. So take a look at some of these great discussions, and we will be talking to you plenty more tomorrow afternoon with a new show and a new bonus show. And now let's look at actually some of the numbers. Let's put up the graph, the chart of the jobs, okay? If we look at the economy has actually, let's see if I go back here, I'll pull a Glenn Beck. The blue line is private sector jobs, Lewis, and as you can see, when President Obama took office, it was on a strong decline, mostly really related to what? George W. Bush.
Of course.
Continued to decline. President Obama said the recovery wouldn't happen right away, but that it would happen eventually. And we have actually recovered and surpassed the number of private sector jobs there were when President Obama became the president. Well, where is the loss? The loss is the red line. The public sector jobs are actually lower than they were when President Obama came into office. I thought Republicans wanted to shrink the size of government and reduce the number of public sector jobs. What happened to time? I thought Republicans would be happy. Oh, but look at what Obama's done. More private sector jobs than we had in January of 2009, and less public sector jobs. Why aren't Republicans cheering?
Well, 2 points on that. One is that, yeah, Republicans support small government, but only on certain things. And on other things, they want a very large government, while you fix your mic there. So, but secondly, Romney and any candidate is going to try to dismiss anything that contradicts his main message. His message is that Obama has been wrong on the economy. The economy is on people's minds. And the job numbers, he's going to try to twist them around to suit his narrative.
Well, he's definitely twisting them around, isn't he, Lewis?
He's not going to admit that Obama has done anything well, unless it was something Obama did well that he claims was his idea.
Of course.
Which we talked about before.
But of course, you know, even with those things he's taking credit for, like getting bin Laden, saying he would have given the order, had the bin Laden raid failed, Romney would be saying never would have done it, absolutely never would have done it.
Of course. Absolutely. He'll say whatever he needs to say at the time.
Let's get on to the next question, which really is, does Mitt Romney care about American jobs and the American economy? What evidence do we have to suggest one or the other? Well, he certainly says he cares about American jobs, and he says that he would be better for the economy, but what evidence do we have? Bain Capital made money, millions, and as a result, so did Mitt Romney, from the failure and the taking apart of companies, the loss of jobs. Mitt Romney made money by taking companies apart through these managed bankruptcies, which he talks about so much. He made money from destroying jobs. That's just a fact, Lewis, but that's not really being talked about, certainly not on Fox News.
No. Why would it?
No, of course not. Mitt Romney loves the American economy, loves American jobs. He chose to keep his own money in the Cayman Islands and formerly Switzerland as well, not indicating much confidence in that American economy, certainly not supporting American banker jobs, and you would think he wants to support American banker jobs.
Perhaps he knew what was going on behind closed doors in the banking system.
Maybe he did. And very interestingly, here's another story. Mitt Romney took the opportunity at a Virginia fundraiser to talk about these pro-America pins that he had made after the 9/11 tragedy to, I guess, support America. Here's what he had to say, and I warn you, this may not be an appropriate video for children. Anybody under 18, you may want to get them out of the room.
We've seen that at critical times. I had the occasion, as you perhaps know, of helping organize the Olympic Winter Games of 2002, and
yeah, you got to clap for that.
And following 9/11 and that great tragedy, which was just prior to our games, one of the people in our team said, "Why don't we create an Olympic pin
right.
which says "United We Stand" on it and has a symbol of a flag. And this obviously is not a new idea. Everybody else in the country was doing the same thing, but we thought it was a new idea at the time, and so we created a little pin.
Hey, he thought it was a new idea at the time, the same way he thought proposing a porn filter in 2007 was a new idea.
Right. He's on the cutting edge, really.
He really is with these ideas. Okay, then I think we're trying to get back to
that we were now going to be selling these pins, and the proceeds would go to the families of victims of the tragedy, and we identified that we're. Thank you. We identified where we're going to be selling these, and we wondered if people would show up to buy.
Right. That pin he's talking about, the pin he set up to support America and support American families, we have a picture of that pin up on our screens right now. Made in China. This is a guy who would be great for the economy. He would be great for jobs, except we're talking about the Chinese economy and Chinese workers, apparently, because this we stand united with Americans after this tragedy by giving our business to the Chinese. Mm-hmm. Gotta love it.
Yeah, he'll continue to grow jobs in China and basically give them money. Give the Chinese government money.
Here's another
American
really funny thing. Lynn Sweet in the Chicago Sun-Times is reporting that the Romney campaign, or rather the RNC, hosted this conference call basically to attack President Obama for high unemployment. The numbers came out, the April jobs numbers came out, and the RNC said, let's have a conversation with people they can call in. When you called an 800 number, so you don't know where you're calling. It was routed by a telecommunications firm in the Philippines. Let's host an RNC-sanctioned phone call to trash Obama on jobs through a subsidiary of Verizon located in the Philippines. Gotta love it, Lewis. Mitt Romney, great for American jobs, great for the American economy.
Very patriotic man.
Hell of a guy. Willard Mittens Romney, gotta love the guy. And on that note, last thing I want to discuss, Mitt Romney being a patriot. Obama's middle name is Hussein, and he's probably not American, so he can't be a patriot. But Mitt Romney is, because let's look at the story. Mitt Romney's Mormon ancestors fled to Mexico to avoid prosecution for anti-polygamy laws in 1892. Wait a second, is that patriotic? Well, I'm sure the other stuff is good, right? Mitt Romney was in favor of the Vietnam War. How patriotic. Oh, but he fled to France as a Mormon missionary to avoid the draft in 1968. Is that patriotism? I'm sure there's more patriotic stuff later on. He made millions of dollars through the American dream at Bain Capital, exporting American jobs to China.
Well, there I have to disagree. That's about as American as apple pie.
Okay, maybe you're right. And destroying jobs altogether in the U.S. And lastly, Mitt Romney parks his personal wealth overseas in banks across the world, including the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, not helping American jobs and avoiding American taxes. He's the patriot who should be elected over President Obama, who isn't patriotic because his middle name is Hussein and he might have been born in Kenya.
Socialist, communist, terrorist.
Yep. Marxist, Nazi.
You name it.
Native American.
Welcome to the show. As our listeners know, Lewis, there's a number of different theories about what exactly happened on 9/11. The one thing I think everybody can agree on, regardless of whether you're a 9/11 truther or a 9/11, it happened the way the government says, or whatever type of theory you subscribe to, I don't think anybody would deny that firefighters and policemen and police women and all sorts of first responders were on the scene on that day, right? I mean, nobody calls that part into question, right?
Right.
And there has been a situation which in a way has been resolved in the last 24 hours regarding a 9/11 first responders bill that the Senate has finally reached a deal to pass that honestly to me represents the absolute worst. What can I even say? The absolute worst repercussion, consequence, indication of how corrupt in many ways the American political system is. And, you know, we're very critical of Fox News on this show, Lewis, as you know. But I have to hand it to Shepard Smith, who time and time again, we can find his faults. I'll be the first one to tell you he has them. But time and time again, seems to just come out on the side of reason and the side of logic, which, when you're watching Fox News, can almost seem completely out of place, can it not?
Sure.
And I don't even know where to start with this. Let's start at the beginning. Shepard Smith the other day started talking about how are people sleeping at night, Republicans specifically, after saying no to this first responders bill. And lo and behold, just wait until you hear how it was going to be paid for and what effect that had. But let's start at the very beginning here with Shepard Smith on Fox News.
How do they sleep at night after this vote on ground zero first responders from 9/11? Are they going to get that done? Or are we just going to leave these American heroes out there to twist in the wind?
Well, it's a good question, and it's a national shame. The idea that the people.
Okay, so there, Shepard Smith plants the idea with Chris Wallace, who up to this point, by the way, wasn't really doing any critical reporting on the fact that it was voted down and it looked like it wasn't going to happen. So then it goes on, and Shepard Smith goes even further, and he says, who's going to be held responsible for the fact that these people are getting sicker and sicker? As you know, Lewis, the effects of having been a first responder at ground zero, significant. Everything from life-changing or even life-ending lung issues, cancers, irreversible conditions. I mean, literally, these people are, I hate the fake support our troops type of stuff, but really these people actually are heroes. Mm-hmm. And they now are facing the repercussions. And Shepard Smith just flat out asking the logical questions here.
People's feet to the fire when we're able to put a 52-story building down there so far at ground zero. We're able to pay for tax cuts for billionaires who don't need them, and it's not going to stimulate the economy. But we can't give health care to ground zero first responders who ran right into the fire, went down there to save people. Do people know what this city was like that day?
Okay, so Lewis, I know it's incredible to believe, but this actually happened on Fox News. This wasn't on a different network. This is real. It's not a Shepard Smith impersonator. This is Fox News reporting. And it's so foreign to us when someone actually just flat out says something logical without GOP talking points or spin on Fox Hard News that it attracts attention. It seems almost out of place.
But this is a story that can hit home for some of the people on Fox News.
You would think so. We'll get to that. I mean, if you even have Fox News on your side on this one, the Democrats have to hold the Republicans' feet to the fire on this. But Shep Smith goes on to admit he got the idea of how absurd it is that what's going on with this bill, which has passed now, from Jon Stewart. And that's fine. Then it goes through Shep Smith. It starts to spread through Chris Wallace. And then everybody on Fox News, of course, 9/11 responders, of course. Of course, you got to pay for that. Got to pay for that. Now, what's the truth here? The truth is that this bill was going to be paid for how? The costs that were going to be associated with funding health benefits for these first responders, it was going to be paid for by closing a tax loophole that existed, which reduced tax liability for foreign companies. Any surprise there, Lewis? That's the truth here. That's where this was going to be funded. And to keep tax loopholes for foreign companies, 9/11 first responders were not going to get funding, no matter what their health situation. Can you think of anything more despicable?
No, that's pretty bad.
The Democrats need to play hardball on this. I mean, you have Fox News on your side. Let's do it. You have to make this, it's time to hit the Republicans hard on this one, Lewis. And we're not really hearing it right now. And I understand that there's other stuff in the news. There's Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, which we'll talk about a little bit later. There's what should Obama be doing next? How is Obama doing? I get that those things are going on. But if you are a progressive, if you are a liberal, if you're a Democrat in the U.S. House or Senate, this is the one that you need to make absolutely clear. Why was this not going through? I don't know. Every week, it seems, we're pointing out, hey, the Democrats could get ahead on this one, this one, this one.
This is a big one.
And we never really hear it, do we?
No. Now, this is something that could help in 2012.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it even...
And don't just do it because it's a political move. Do it because it's the right thing to do, obviously.
I mean, we're not going to fund 9/11 first responders because foreign companies who donate to politicians want to keep those tax loopholes? And it's Democrats and Republicans. In this particular case, it was Republicans holding it up. Now, we'll move on a little bit, but still on the same issue. Johnny Isaacson was on C-SPAN the other day, And a caller asks very directly about this, and Johnny Isakson, I think, very coyly pretends not to hear the question. He answers a different question. Some people are saying, well, he's an older guy, he couldn't really hear the question. I believe he heard it. I believe he heard the question and just he pretended not to. Let's take a listen.
The Republicans are blocking debate of the 9/11 first responders bill, which, I mean, you have people dying from things that happened when they, I'm just working there for a year after, and I was wondering what your opinion is on that and why the Senate is blocking that but debating stuff that doesn't matter right now.
Thank you. What's your opinion?
I think I heard parts of it. It was a little bit garbled, so if I missed the answer, I apologize. But I think the question was with regard to what the Senate agenda and going back to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and maybe the DREAM Act as well, and prohibiting debate because the Republicans have not voted for cloture on either one of those. And I think the primary reason it hasn't voted for cloture is that the message is very mixed from our committee.
Yeah, right. Answer a question about cloture. That's exactly what was being asked. Last thing Johnny Isakson wants to talk about, Republican senator from Georgia. Cloture. Amazing. I believe he heard it. I don't know what you think, Lewis.
Probably.
So the bill has passed, and I'm just begging. I mean, come on. It is time, Democrats, to get it together and mount a campaign around this. Republicans, in order to keep favor with foreign companies and tax loopholes, wanted to prevent money from getting to 9/11 first responders. And that really needs to be the main narrative here. Let's just get it together. And come on. I don't understand any reason not to. It would be politically advantageous. It is the right thing to do. We need to expose who really is patriotic here. Is this patriotic or not? And there were filibuster threats and threats of obstruction from Senator Tom Coburn, Republican from Oklahoma. And fortunately, we got this through. Kirsten Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer reached the deal with the Republican senators. And I just can't, for all the talk about liberals don't care about firefighters or soldiers or 9/11 or whatever, I cannot be more glad that this finally went through because it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, but there's a lot of hypocrisy here.
Not to mention, by the way, if we believe Republicans are so desperate to focus on jobs the way they claim that they are and have for so long, why not have the speech outlining the plan on jobs as early as possible? In other words, if you really care about...
There is no plan.
Hold on a second. If Barack Obama is going to outline the plan in his speech, and you're a Republican, like John Boehner, and you have said point blank to the American people and to your electorate, jobs are the #1 concern to me, then you would want Barack Obama to give his speech as soon as possible. Why delay it even 24 hours? Let the speech happen. Let's get the plan because you told us, John Boehner, jobs are the most important thing. What am I missing here?
Sounds like a good plan.
In either case, why are Republicans doing this? Let the speech happen. And then Senator Jim DeMint, odd guy, by the way, really an odd guy, he says it will actually be difficult to watch this speech. Really? You're having trouble with speeches now, Jim DeMint? Take a listen and look at what he had to say about this. It's very bizarre.
Well, I'm frankly very tired of speeches. I don't want to be disrespectful to the president, but what I want to see is something in writing and that the Congressional Budget Office tells us what it's going to cost so that we can not only read it ourselves, but the American people can read it. Speeches we found are not very similar to the actual legislation. So I'm pretty frustrated with the speech idea and frankly the things that have been leaking out of the White House.
All right. So he's frustrated with speeches. If you're a senator in the United States and you're tired of speeches, your entire job is basically to go to and to give speeches. That's kind of the job. Maybe senator's not the best job for you if you're so tired of speeches.
This is pretty cynical because people usually don't read legislation. So if he's wanting the American people to read legislation, they're going to be even more confused about what Obama's real policy is.
Let's be honest here. People aren't going to read anything.
Imagine for a second that the American people do read any legislation that is actually put out there. Congressional approval will drop even lower if that's even possible.
Right.
The last thing you want if you're in the House or Senate is anybody reading anything you're putting out there. Believe me.
People don't even read the platforms of their the people they elect to office.
Yeah.
So really, what are they going to? They're going to read legislation.
They're going to sit there and read it, yeah. Jim DeMint, if it's so hard for you to watch speeches, you probably shouldn't be a senator because
In a way, though, I have to agree with him. It is frustrating to listen to speeches where even Barack Obama just says these vague things, outlines some type of plan without going into any detail.
Really? Barack Obama says vague things and doesn't go into detail? That's just Barack Obama who does that.
No, I didn't say that.
That's what Jim DeMint does.
That's what all politicians do, Dave.
Right.
Well, and I'm saying it is frustrating to listen to.
Yeah, but if you're part of it, you can't just point it out and say that's what you're frustrated with.
That's the ridiculous part.
Oh, by the way, also, he says, I don't want to be disrespectful to the president. And then he goes on to do nothing but disrespect the president. It's like, listen, I don't want to be a murderer, okay? And then you kill someone 5 seconds later. I just want to be clear. I do not want to be a murderer. It doesn't matter. If you do it, you do it. Saying I don't want to disrespect the president, well, it sounds like you're being disrespectful without wanting to then.
Wasn't as disrespectful as some other people.
Listen, I don't want to be a murderer. So anyway, that's what's going on with the jobs thing. I think Republicans just making a mistake strategically. Let the speech happen. Then you come out and say, you know what? We moved our debate because we said we're concerned about jobs. Therefore, we wanted the jobs speech as soon as possible. And now we're going to go ahead and bash the speech because it wasn't good. That, I think, strategically would have made more sense for Republicans. I don't know.
Agreed.
Welcome to the David Pakman Show. It is Labor Day, and not a surprise, Lewis. Republicans are cheering bad jobs numbers. Republicans desperate to do anything they can to make the Obama administration and Democrats look bad, even at the expense of the country. Can you think of anything less patriotic than opting for bad economic numbers when the other party has the guy in the White House to then use it for political gain in an election for you? Unbelievably unpatriotic, is it not?
Unbelievable, David.
You don't really think so. I feel like you don't think you think this is just kind of it's politics, whatever. But this is the exact thing that
I think it's just that I'm desensitized to it.
Well, if Lewis is desensitized to it, fine. He doesn't have to participate in this in this analysis if he doesn't want to. But we need to be specifically pointing out the fact that Republicans want the economy to do well when they can take credit for it. And if good jobs numbers are going to make President Obama look good, then they don't want those good job numbers, even though it's people in their districts, it's parents, it's children, it's students in their districts that need these jobs. But they are taking as much liberty as I can recall taking with bad job numbers to kind of casually show that they would be doing things very, very differently. Well, listen, you've got control of the House. You have presidential candidates like Michelle Bachmann running around saying they could fix the jobs problem in 90 days. Well, isn't it a little bit rude to keep that information to yourselves? Why not, Michelle Bachmann, fix it then? Fix it now. You don't have to be president to fix it. Do the patriotic thing. Do the right thing. And fix the job situation if it's just so easy for you to do.
Mm-hmm. I guess the key to winning an election is just to hold on to that information and hope that the people will elect you so that you can fix it.
Well, Herman Cain has all the plans, but he's not going to tell us what any of them are until he's elected, because until you're the president, you can't even speak about what you would do as president.
Right.
Michelle Bachmann apparently opting for something similar.
In a way, I respect what Herman Cain is doing because at least he's not saying he has these specific plans that he can't talk anything about. He says, okay, I'll make these decisions when I'm elected.
Yeah.
I'll surround myself with good people and make these decisions. Whereas Bachmann is saying, oh yeah, I know exactly what to do. I'm not going to talk about it though. I'm not going to outline any specific details or any plans. You just have to trust me.
Yeah, but in what other job would that be acceptable?
I mean, how do you determine whether to vote for him if you don't know what he stands for? Because after you vote for him, he's going to determine what he believes in.
Yeah, couldn't all the candidates just say, I'm going to be the best at picking the right people to advise me, and then we will just vote on who we believe would pick the best people? I mean, come on.
I know. His plan could be to turn the White House into a pizza parlor.
In some sense, he is being honest, though, because most people in this country select the president or any candidate based on personality factors that have nothing to do with their beliefs anyway.
Or their
so in
looks.
some sense,
Yeah, he's saying, if you like me, if you find my way of speaking and my delivery compelling and you think I'm a nice guy, vote for me, and then I'll pick people that will figure out what to do. And maybe it is honest in a way. I don't know. It certainly doesn't inspire confidence.
Right.
And because it is Labor Day, we should look at some fascinating labor numbers, many of which are kind of scary. 25.3 million Americans are the true size of the unemployment crisis. And I know Lewis already has questions. He thought the numbers were a little different. You have to include, when we look at the unemployment crisis, people who are out of work, people who are working but are working part-time because they can't get a full-time job, people who want to work but have simply given up searching because they are so frustrated by not being able to find a job. A lot of those don't count in unemployment numbers. We need to consider them when we look at the unemployed. There's also 6.9 million jobs fewer today than in December of 2007. And 25 is the number of times since January of 2009 that monthly job growth failed to keep up with basic population growth. This is often missed when we look at new jobs numbers. Because of the population growth in the United States, about 150,000 new jobs per month are needed just to have an even unemployment rate, okay? And we've not kept up with that 25 times since January of 2009. All of the headlines saying job growth has stalled. Job growth has not stalled. We're not even really keeping up with population growth, okay? At the same time, when we actually look at the number of jobs the American economy needs to add each month to fill the 11.3 million job deficit by the middle of 2016, okay, is 280,000 new jobs per month. That's the target. That's where we need to be. Where we actually are, 35,000 average jobs in the last 3 months. So there's a long way to go here, ladies and gentlemen. And I am actually confused why, when Barack Obama, the president, proposed giving his job speech on Wednesday night, John Boehner said, no, you can't do that in front of a joint session of Congress on Wednesday night because it conflicts with our Republican debate that we're going to do. Obama's press secretary, Carney, said it was just a coincidence. And Obama caved and he postponed his big job speech until the next day. I actually think this was a mistake for Republicans. It may seem like Republicans have won something. They held their date. And this is all, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, people are unemployed out there. Let's stop playing games about when Obama gives his speech. But if we get past that for a second, shouldn't John Boehner have allowed Obama's job speech to happen on Wednesday, have the debate Thursday, and then all of the candidates can come together and pick apart Obama on that speech? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that have been a better strategy?
Not that they need any specific speech or anything to bash Obama on.
No, they can
just stand there and say Barack Obama has failed, and millions of idiots will just nod their head in agreement.
No question about it. But wouldn't it be nice to at least have the fresh speech in the back of people's minds the next day, and you can criticize that?
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to the show. Special membership offer happening right now in honor of Lewis's band Krakatoa winning the Metal Olympics. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't get too wrapped up in it. DavidPakman.com/Krakatoa. You'll get the commercial-free podcast, the bonus shows, access to our archive that dates back to August of 2005. I don't remember the date offhand, but I think it's August 17th was the first show.
Don't know.
Yeah, no, I certainly wasn't asking, but I don't know either. You know, I guess we're both in the same boat there. Have you heard, Lewis, about this bill sponsored by Senator John McCain? He was in a way, kind of almost the president. 3081 is the number of this proposal. It's the Enemy Belligerent Interrogation, Detention, and Prosecution Act. This is a concern both for individuals, I hope, on the left and on the right. It would authorize the federal government to detain American citizens indefinitely without a trial, without even charging them with anything, without even reading them their Miranda rights. Okay? Homeland Security Secretary has classified veterans, retired law enforcement, Ron Paul supporters, conservatives as terrorists. That we know. So we know that the skills and the discernment that exists on behalf of the government to figure out exactly who is a risk are not always that great. That I think we know. We also know that when it comes to, for example, the no-fly list, Ted Kennedy was on the no-fly list for a while. So we know that with that assessment of people, we were kind of off also in many cases. The bill is just going to open up the door not only to that, but to the violation of what many others are saying are a number of constitutional amendments. The bill would provide for interrogation and detention of enemy belligerents, is the term that's being used, who commit hostile acts against the U.S. And the idea, I guess, is that the government wants to start, wants to continue, wants to expand, use whatever word you want, being able to just pick anybody up, whether or not you have real evidence against them, whether or not you just have hearsay, hold them indefinitely without even accusing them of a crime, and interrogate them. This is essentially the goal of this bill.
It's like the Patriot Act on steroids.
In a sense, it is. Yeah. And this is opposed by the Campaign for Liberty, the Cato Institute, Amnesty International, Arkansas Libertarian Party. We're seeing opposition to this from all sides. So you should think, Lou, as well. If there's broad-based opposition and people from all sides of the political spectrum who don't like this, certainly it won't pass, right? Because the will of the people is represented in our political system.
I'd hope so.
But as we know, that's often not the case. And it's appalling to me that two so-called patriotic men, I mean, who even knows at this point whether the patriotic people are the McCains or not, but John McCain and John Thune. McCain spent 5 years in a North Vietnamese POW camp. John Thune professed to have heartland values. How could they put forth such an intellectually dishonest, poorly defined, as many of these bills are, ill thought out, and according to many legal experts, blatantly unconstitutional law? There is no definition about what material support means. What does it mean to provide material support to a terrorist organization? Well, I don't think you should be surprised. I don't think you should be surprised either, Lewis, that it's not clearly defined. That's how these laws are used to the advantage of those who don't want clear definition. They want a free rein to basically do whatever they want.
Right.
Any U.S. citizen who's a war protester and publicly exhibits an anti-government sentiment could actually fall under the category here where you could just be held indefinitely without being charged for anything. And you know, if you watch this show or listen to this show at all, and you know too, Lewis, sometimes you pay attention, I think you'll be able to attest to this, I dislike Nazi comparisons. Any comparison from either side, about either side, to being a Nazi, I don't like.
But I think you're going to make one now.
But I am going to make one, and it's not a comparison to Nazis in the abstract, but the consequences of S-3081 are reminiscent of Nazi Germany's discriminatory decrees, which were enacted on the last day of February in 1933, in terms of the latitude and the effect that they would have. And that's a Nazi comparison I'm comfortable making.
I'll back that up.
Lewis, I have a serious question for you, and I know it's going to sound weird, but I want you to answer it in a serious manner. Are French millionaires more patriotic than American millionaires?
Patriotic? I don't know. I've never met a French millionaire.
Okay. The rich French are saying to Sarkozy, please tax us more. And Sarkozy is preparing to unveil a series of budget cuts in France. And some of his country's richest citizens are asking him to take more of their money. And billionaire L'Oreal heiress Liliane Bettencourt and 15 others have signed a petition urging the government to hit the wealthiest French with this one-time tax. Now, you'll remember, Newt Gingrich once proposed a similar one-time tax. Or no, I'm sorry, Donald Trump once proposed a similar one-time tax in the U.S., in the 90s at some point. I don't remember exactly when it was.
And in general, Warren Buffett has been saying this recently.
Well, we'll get to the Warren Buffett thing. Absolutely. You know where I'm going. And the French rich who are proposing this are saying it should be a reasonable one-off special tax. And they say, according to the petition, we are aware that we have benefited fully from a French model and European environment to which we are attached and that we want to help preserve. At a time when the public deficit and the prospect of an aggravation of public debt threaten the future of France and Europe, it seems necessary that we contribute. That sounds incredibly patriotic for all of the stuff that Bill O'Reilly says about the French. Remember Boycott France? Mm-hmm. And freedom fries instead of French fries from good friend of the show, former Congressman Bob Ney. But he knows I don't agree with him on the freedom fries thing. It sounds to me incredible that we consider the French to be less patriotic when it's the American millionaires who are saying, I earned a right to keep my money. American billionaire Warren Buffett makes a plea for higher taxes, saying he pays the lowest tax rate of anybody in his office. He was, of course, called unpatriotic and a socialist. It's remarkable to me, and it really seems, for whatever reason, like these French millionaires seem to have... I don't know what that was.
That was your computer, Dave.
That was weird. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what that was? I was watching cartoons during the break. I'm sorry. It seems weird to me that so many are saying the American position is the unpatriotic one on this. I just don't get it, Lewis.
Little confusing, yeah. I'm gonna go back and say that I think the French millionaires are more patriotic.
Well, there's a discussion that we have to have here also, Lewis, which is that the anger many Americans seem to have about taxes might be different if the services that we received from the government were as good as the ones that Europeans are receiving. In other words, here we hear people say, I don't want the government to have any more of my money because they're going to waste it. They're not going to spend it right. If the government does health care, it's not going to be good. Public education, so on and so forth. But hold on a second. Maybe the problem is that we are spending so much of the GDP and so much of our money on wars and on defense, Lewis, whereas other countries are more intelligently distributing that money to actual services. So therefore, if you live in France, for example, and you know that there's a great government healthcare system and you've got education that is going to be taken care of, and you know social services are going to be provided, you don't have this angry, visceral reaction when you hear about taxes that many in the United States now do.
You really think that's what's going on here? You think if we had better spending, millionaires would be more likely to say, hey, take more of my money?
I'm not just saying better spending, but I'm saying if all along the contexts were different and it was one where it was clear that the government is looking to provide basic fundamental services to people in a positive way, as opposed to this constant fear, in part created by politicians, in part created by reality, in part created by just general hysteria, that any money you give to the government is wasted and not used properly, sure, everything would be different. I mean, don't you agree on this, Natan, that if we actually considered the system in Europe, if people in the U.S. had more confidence, the perception of so-called evil taxes would be very, very different?
Absolutely.
That's going to be a hard mentality to break out of when almost every politician in some shape or form is constantly slamming government spending.
You're right. I don't know if it's possible.
But I think there's another side to this. I mean, I think that a big reason why people feel this way is because we have one political party, namely the Republicans, that run for office on an anti-government rhetoric.
Anti-tax rhetoric also.
Anti-tax, but anti-government. I mean, they claim that they want government to do less, and yet they're running for government. I mean, in most of these European countries, it's not the case that one of the parties thinks that the government shouldn't do certain basic things. The thing is, in the U.S., conservatives think that the government should do very few things, like, for example, the military.
Sure. No, it's a completely different context, I think.
And we've seen the cuts that the Republicans want to make, and the Democrats can't go in and say, here are things we want to add. You just can't do it.
They can, but you know how it's all pork, it's all it's too much spending, it's the wrong spending, it's socialist spending.
Right.
Yeah, it's a hard narrative to break out of. Let's take a break. Make sure to like the David Pakman Show on Facebook, facebook.com/David Pakman Show, and pick up a David Pakman Show t-shirt at davidpakman.com/gear. Stay tuned, plenty more coming up. Receiving when they get back. Skip all of that stuff. Just do the segment on military pay, fine. but at least mention the fact that now we are working within an exploded deficit that is a result of 8 years of George W. Bush policies. At least consider that. Please, just mention it in passing. Mention it in the last 15 seconds while your music is playing, going to commercial.